In this video, I'm going to be talking about tidying up After Effects in two different ways. One, tidying up the After Effects interface and customizing it to your own tastes. And two, tidying up your projects. For example, when you're finished with something, or if you want to pass a project off to another animator so that they can continue working on it. So let's start out by talking about the interface for just one sec, and then we can get into the customization. So by this point, you definitely know that the two most important windows in After Effects are this composition viewer here and the timeline, where you do most of your work, right? But also a lot goes on here in this project panel, and also the properties panel is pretty important too. And if you think about it, this effect control panel up here is actually very important as well. So yeah, in After Effects, you have a lot of windows that you have to navigate and deal with, okay? And if we look up here in the Windows menu, you'll see that there's actually even a lot more. Now, some of these are important to me and I use them a bunch, and some of these I use once in a while, and others I never use, okay? But basically, the main thing that's important to me is that I want as few windows open as possible while I'm working. And I kind of want to have the interface fit all together in a way to accommodate whatever it is that I'm working on, okay? So that's sort of my focus. Now, just in case it's not clear, I want to show you how you can kind of resize and move around these panels here, okay? So really, basically, if you've used Photoshop or Illustrator or Premiere, all of these programs kind of work the same way nowadays, which is really nice. Adobe's done a good job of kind of systematizing these interfaces. So After Effects works pretty similarly as those other ones, right? So if I hover, for example, over this sort of dark line here, I get this different cursor for my arrow, and that means that I can expand this panel this way or shrink it down this way, right? So that's kind of cool. And of course, you can always go up to this here and expand this down this way or up this way as well, okay? So things can be moved kind of however you want. Now, just say there's something up here like info, and I want to move this to a different spot, okay? I would grab this, okay, and kind of drag it, and I'm holding down on my trackpad right now, and After Effects is basically giving me a whole bunch of options of where I can drop this, right? So I could drop it here, and that would kind of put it like this, down below in a new panel right there. Or I could take this, and if I dropped it here, it would make it another one of these tabs that's here in this panel, okay? Or I could take this and move it over here to the left and have like split tabs here. I mean, split panels here, which still contain like the same tabs and stuff, but are just displayed differently, right? Most of these panels, actually, I kind of just want to close down. So how would you do that? Well, if you go into the little hamburger menu, like this one, for example, I could just close the panel, right? And then let's see, I want to keep properties open, but effects and presets, yep, let's close that. Libraries, yep, close that down. And then up here too, actually, I don't really want any of these. I'm going to close preview and align and audio, okay? So really what I like is just having those ones up that I mentioned before, okay? The project panel, the effect controls, and my properties panel, and then of course the composition and the timeline. Right on, let's move on and talk about workspaces. So yeah, in After Effects, these workspaces are kind of up here, okay? You might not have ever even noticed these before. So you've got like a default one here, and when I click on this, it changes the interface to look like this, right? And then I've got this standard one that I was kind of working in, and that looks like this, okay? So there's actually a bunch more up here. If you go to Window and Workspace, you can see that there's a bunch more here. And basically, these are just different ways of laying out the windows and the panels, and they're kind of like presets that After Effects thinks might be helpful depending on what it is that you want to be doing. Now, in this class so far, I've just been working in the standard workspace, and I actually started this video in the standard workspace, but then just a second ago, I kind of closed down a bunch of windows over here and stuff, right? So now I've kind of got three choices in regard to the standard workspace, right? So what I could do is go up here into this hamburger menu here and click down on this, and here are my three choices. I could reset to saved layout, okay, which would make it just like it was at the start of this lesson, okay? So if I do that, it will open all this stuff over here and up here again, right? So I would now have to just say close this down to make it the way that I want it, close this down, close this down, close this down, and finally close this. Okay. Now, the second choice is that I could save these changes to the standard workspace. Okay. And what that would mean is that from now on, this would be the standard workspace. Okay. And I couldn't reset it back like the way I could if I reset this here. Now, if I set this as this new standard workspace and then I made changes to it, when I reset it, it would set it back to this, okay? So that's the second option. And the third option is I could save this as a new workspace, okay? And this is the one that probably is the best one to do, I think. So if you click on this, now it's like, hey, what's the name of this new workspace? And you could call it like Noel or, whatever. You could call it Noel too. That's what I'm gonna do for now, all right? So cool, so now I've got that up here, okay? And there's actually one way that I can kind of customize this even more, and that's to go here and edit workspaces. So when I click on that, it opens this edit workspaces pop-up, okay? And I've got the bar folder, which kind of refers to these things up here. And I've got this overflow menu, which refers to things that I can't click on right now, but if I clicked on these chevrons here, it would kind of open up a little overflow menu, okay? And then it's also got this do not show folder here, okay, which has something in it called undocked panels, right? So basically I can move these around and I can move these into different folders. Like if I don't want small screen, I could move this into do not show. And if I do not want libraries, for example, like I could move it into the overflow menu, right? And same with review and learn, okay? So now I could have just these three things here up on the bar, okay? And even better, I can take Noel and like move it on top. So that's like the main first option that I get, right? And if I hit okay, yep. Now up here, I've got a much tidier workspaces menu or bar or whatever. And I've got this one set now to my favorite settings, right? So that's pretty cool. It is. Let's move on now to the last way that you can tidy up and customize your After Effects interface. For this, we have to open the After Effects preferences. So we can go up here, okay, and then to settings, which is somehow what the preferences are called here. And then I'm gonna pull down to appearance. Okay, and that opens the preferences, okay, and the appearance menu. So this is pretty cool. Right now, the most important thing that we have here is this slider, okay? And if I slide this up, we can make After Effects really bright, like this sort of bright, it's not really bright, it's actually like kind of a middle gray, but it looks hella bright to me because I'm used to keeping this like on the darkest settings, okay? And actually the default, if I click on this, is the darkest settings because pretty much every animator usually keeps it on the darkest settings. I'm not quite sure why, but I always do too, and I just think it's way better to look at, right? So the other thing you could change around here are these interactive controls and focus indicators. So like the interactive controls are the words. Like up here it says tidying main and Noel, and okay, so I can make those like, I have these right now set to lightest, but the default is to have them set kind of to the middle. So it's pretty small difference, but you can see here as I slide this up, there's like a little sample here, and this gets like brighter and darker. So I usually prefer these brighter. And same with these focus indicators here, which is something like this, okay? You can set these to be darker or whatever, but I usually, and I think the default is, yeah, it's in the middle, but I usually set these to be lighter as well, okay? But obviously go ahead and set these however you want. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about, which is also super cool, are labels. And I actually really love this, and I can totally geek out on this. Now, right now, these are the standard ones that come with After Effects, okay? But if it's not clear, these are these little tabs of color down here, and also what becomes like your layer colors as well, right? You could change these and you can change their names, which I always think is kind of funny. So like I will always generally kind of geek out and set these up just the way I want them one day, kind of as a procrastination thing, I think, but you can get in here and be like, ooh, I want to set this. Usually for me, I want them to be very vivid, okay? So I'm like, ooh, I like this red here better than this red there, okay? And then you could also like, I guess just say like, maybe you don't want brown or whatever. So you could like, I guess that's why you can change the names and you could have like a different color, like baby blue there or whatever, right? So yeah, these are a lot of label colors and you can make them whatever you want and name them whatever you want. So I think that's hella cool. And I would definitely geek out on all this if I were you and set these up to be your very favorite colors, okay? And that's about as much as you can customize After Effects itself. Let me pivot now and talk about the other half of this, which is tidying up your projects. Now, everyone has their own balance when it comes to making a mess versus cleaning up messes. Personally, I like to work without thinking about organization at all and make a big mess. But then periodically I'll stop and clean things up and organize them. That's my method, and I'm sure you have your own. However, as you get further into your work with After Effects, you might wind up collaborating with other animators on a project. And then, if you're passing off projects to each other, you really want to tidy up your project first. You just want it to be as easy as possible for them to pick it up and start working on it right away. So how can you organize your projects? Well, here are 3 big rules. 1, I know we've talked about this, but always name your layers. And not just circle if you have 20 circles, but like light blue circle or something very specific. 2, always name your comps clearly as well. Okay, so if you have a main comp that every other pre-comp feeds into, you definitely want to label that main comp. It's also helpful for the other animators if you add the designation PC to the names of your pre-comps, just so it's clear at a glance that they're pre-comps. 3, you want to create a folder structure that actually makes sense in the project panel and then name those folders and put the appropriate things into them. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So here's a typical messy After Effects project, like the kind that I would be working on if I was like designing and animating something at the same time or whatever, okay? And as you can see here, yeah, some things are named, other things are not, like these comps, comp 1, comp 2, comp 3, but like nothing's in a folder and it's just like a whole bunch of stuff jammed in here, right? So this is how I would tidy this up, okay? Now this is definitely personal. And what's important is that you come up with your own method and then you can apply that, right? This is just my method, okay? So what I do is I usually make an assets folder to begin with, right? So I click on this create a new folder button and then type assets, okay? And then with that selected, I'm gonna click on the make a new folder button again, and that's gonna make a folder in the assets folder. And I'm gonna type PSDs, and then my little method is to use a lowercase s. I don't know, it's just my little idiosyncratic thing, right? And then I'm gonna click on this again and press this button again, and now type ills with a lowercase s. That's for my Illustrator art, okay? I'm just trying to think of folders for things that are kind of already in here, okay? So the final category is images, so great. And now let me go through and put everything into these folders. So I would take these, and actually I would do this and select all these first, and then select these and this, okay? And then put those in the images folder. And now, okay, right here I have my Illustrator art, and this right here is actually, I imported this as a composition, and this is the composition that was made, but I actually don't need that Illustrator composition anymore, so I'm gonna just delete that, and yep, I'm sure I wanna delete that, okay? I'm gonna take this folder here with the Illustrator art and put it into the ills folder, okay? And now this is my Photoshopped art, so I'm gonna take this folder and put that into the PSDs folder. Cool. So now I can close that down. Awesome. Now I'm gonna make one more folder here in the main project window, call that comps, okay? And then with that selected, boop, now I'm gonna make one that's called PCs for pre-comps, okay? And I'm gonna put the main comp here and then take these, which I assume are my pre-comps, okay? Because they're not labeled, they're not named, okay? And drop these in there, all right? And so now this is pretty neat. Like I can either have this open and look at it like that, or I can have it open like that and just kind of understand where everything is. And even more importantly, somebody else looking at this, right, like another animator, could pretty much easily figure this system out. It's not that complicated, right? If they needed to find a Photoshop document or a Photoshop file, I think they would look in here, all right? So yeah, that's my little system. Now, there's actually one other thing in this project as a whole that needs to be tidied up, all right? And at the moment, this project just has a lot of extra stuff in it, okay? So if you look down here in my timeline, I've got a whole bunch of things that are turned off, okay? And what this means is this is the look that the client has ultimately approved, okay? But it took a bunch of tries to get there. And like I was experimenting with stuff and trying to get it right. And finally they said, okay, this is the way it should look. So now I kind of need to get rid of all this other media that's now unnecessary, especially if I want to pass this off to another animator, because it would be weirdly confusing to get something with all these layers turned off and extra stuff. And also it would make a bigger project that I would have to pass off. Something that's actually really cool about the project panel is like, if I click in here, for example, and I click on this. Now, the project panel will tell you if the media is being used in the project, or at least in the comps, okay? So right now, if I click on this, you can see that this is saying it's being used one time, okay? Whereas this, if I click on here, it doesn't say anything, so that's not being used, okay? So that's kind of a helpful start. So the last step is to get rid of all that extra media and then package up the After Effects project with all the necessary artwork and assets attached. To do that, we need to dig into the Dependencies menu. So you'll find that up here in File and Dependencies, right? And the ones that I want to talk about now are these top 4, okay? And I want to start with Remove Unused Footage. Now, what that does is it's going to look through your project and remove any media that is not in a comp, okay? So if I do this, right now it gives me this little tab here that says 9 footage or folder items were removed. You can undo if you wish, all right? And I'm going to just hit OK. But it's super cool that you can undo these steps, right? I always love that. It always makes me feel reassured, okay? And so what this has done, now you can see that it's gone through, for example, this images folder, and it's pulled out all the ones that are not in a comp, okay? Which is really helpful, but there's one catch about this, which is if we look down here, we'll see that I have a bunch of layers that are in this comp, but they've been turned off, okay? So remove unused footage will not get rid of these, okay? Which is probably good because maybe you want these, I don't know, maybe not, I don't know. So you certainly don't want After Effects choosing for you. So that's remove unused footage, basically. So let me go up here to File and Dependencies, okay? And I'm gonna go down to the next one, which is Consolidate All Footage, okay? And this one's sometimes useful and sometimes not. It's pretty specific, actually. So what it's gonna do is it's gonna look through the project and then find essentially duplicate copies of anything. Like if you have a photo in there twice, for example, it will get rid of the extra copy, okay? And if that photo was used, for example, in 2 different comps or whatever, in 2 different instances, then it'll actually find the duplicate and still reduce it down to one of those, okay, but swap it into all the places that it was used, okay? So if you do have something like this, it's actually pretty cool. And of course, I do have something like this, right? So right now, this dots 3, I pulled in twice, okay, just to make this point. And I used it one time in one comp and one time in another comp, okay? So if I go up here to File, and this doesn't have to be selected, by the way. If I go up here to File and Dependencies and Consolidate All Footage, boop. Now you see, well, okay, over here, it says 1 footage or folder item was consolidated. You can undo if you wish. Again, super nice that you can undo that if you have a change of heart. Okay, if I hit OK, now you can see up here that there was only 1 copy of dots and it's used 2 times, okay? So that's pretty cool, consolidate all footage, okay? I'm actually gonna undo the last 2 steps, okay? So I'm gonna put that back and I'm gonna put all these things back, right? Again, it's super nice that you can undo all that, right? And now let's talk about Reduce Project, which is very, very important, actually. That's up here, File and Dependencies and Reduce Project. Now, it's not only important, but this is maybe a little bit scary, okay? So the way that it works is that you can select a comp in the project panel, or multiple comps if you want, and then when you hit Reduce, it will get rid of anything that's not in the selected comp or comps, okay? So let me demo this for you. The only way this works is by selecting a comp first, okay? So if I select this, and I go up here to File and Dependencies, and then Reduce Project, right? Now over here it says 13 items that were not used and the selected items have been deleted. You can undo if desired, all right? Items referenced, blah, 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 okay? So, right, now I can hit OK and I can also undo that. But that's basically done the other 2 steps, okay? That's basically reduced and consolidated everything already, okay? Basically. So reducing is really, really useful. The one thing just to remember is basically what I like to do is save my project first before I reduce, okay? And then I save it as like a sequential number or something like version 2, and then I reduce, okay? And that's just so that I have a copy of the previous messy version in case there was something in there that I actually forgot that I really needed or whatever, okay? So yeah, so that's Reduce, and it's very powerful, and it's a really good way to clean up your projects very quickly, okay? And you can undo it. And now one other thing that reducing also will not get rid of media that's here in your comp and is turned off, okay? So if at the end step, you really are gonna pass this off to somebody else, what I would do is select all these things, okay? And just make sure you really don't need them. Your client's not going to come back to you and say, you know, let's put that dots thing back on or whatever. So you could leave these here, or you could just delete them. Now, I should say that deleting them from the comp is not the same as deleting them from the project. So you'd still need to remove unused footage at that point. The last thing that we want to discuss is collect files, okay? So if I go up here and down here to dependencies, we've got collect files. And this is definitely the most important of all these dependencies, okay? Because what it does is it packages up your After Effects project and all of the associated media with it into one folder, okay? And this is really important because, as I've said a few times, After Effects projects don't contain the media, like the photos and the songs or whatever it is, right? They reference that media on a drive, okay? So when you do this, when you collect the files, okay, it's gonna find all that media and put it in a folder with the project, okay? And that means that that folder and that project can be moved. For example, you could give it to another animator somewhere else, like in a different country or whatever, to work on, right? So let's go ahead and collect this and see what happens, right? All right, so it opens this window here, and basically you just want to make sure that this is set to all, okay, and that this generate report only is not checked, okay, as it is, don't check that. And then this here is pretty useful. If this is checked, it will reveal the collected project in the Finder when it's finished. Like it'll basically pop open a window with it in it, all right? So that's really useful. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit collect. And also you definitely wanna save your project before collecting, okay? So I'm gonna hit collect. And now basically it just wants a folder and a name for this, and this is fine. So I'm gonna hit save. Okay, and now you see that it has indeed, as advertised, opened this up in a little window here in my Finder, okay? And here we go. Here's the After Effects project. And then it also generates this report, which we can look at real quick, which is, you know, just has like the date that it was made and the time and like what it's called and like the source files and a bunch of information about it, like plugins and stuff, okay, which in this case we don't really have. And then the most important thing here is this footage folder, okay, which has the assets folder in it that I made in After Effects with those same named folders with my little characteristic S's, okay? And then I've got all of the layers that I had in the project, okay? All the ones that are necessary for just say another animator or for you in the future or whoever it is to open this. And then this will open and all the media will be connected and everything will be in place just the way you want. Right on. I hope this was helpful. I hope you're having a great catch-up week, and may all your projects be tidy.